Clinical psychologist and public intellectual figurehead Dr. Jordan Peterson recently sat down with Sky News Australia host Piers Morgan to present his opinion on a bunch of controversial topics, ranging from Elon Musk's plans for Twitter, Donald Trump and his presidency, and Meghan Markle's podcast. Dr. Peterson didn't hold back one bit and gave the media a lot to talk about. And here's everything he had to say. Jordan Peterson had no beef against Meghan Markle until Piers Morgan played him this clip. Following her highly publicized exit from the royal family, Markle launched her own podcast titled Archetypes, where she attempts to discuss and subvert the labels that try to hold women back. In one of the latest episodes, Markle decided to play a clip of a lecture given by Peterson, showing him discussing how crazy women cannot be controlled by men. Markle used the clip as an example while talking about how Hollywood depicts women as crazy to diminish their credibility in the real world. Some of the other clips she played were from the sitcom How I Met Your Mother, where Neil Patrick Harris's character, Barney Stinson, talks about how the hotter the woman, the crazier she has to be. From Scrubs, where Elliot's character confides in her friend about a relationship, saying, "I can't take it, Carla. I cannot hide the crazy a minute longer. I'm just this big mountain of cuckoo about to erupt and spew molten crazy." Each of the clips she used emphasized the point that every woman has, at some point in her life, been called crazy, hysterical, insane, irrational, or something else of the sort. All words that are used to dismiss women's experiences and minimize what they are feeling. Now that you have some context, let's move on to Peterson's response. Piers Morgan has a history of attacking Meghan Markle, and he used this clip as another reason. The English presenter has been pretty vocal about his feelings for the Duchess of Sussex. He strongly believes that she has been opportunistic and false from the moment she stepped into the royal family, and uses every chance he can to slander her. And recently, he seems to have found an ally in Jordan Peterson himself. Peterson himself is well known for his controversial views on women, gender, masculinity, beauty, and pretty much any topic you can think of. Morgan saw it fit to introduce Peterson to that clip of Markle using a clip of his lecture, and his response was everything you would expect from someone like him. Peterson said, "Her voice drips with the same falsehood that the voice of Kamala Harris drips with. It only gets worse." He continued to call her a sanctimonious, faux, compassionate woman who talked down to her viewers and listeners. In comparing her to Vice President Harris, he meant to say that both women tend to patronize people with their tone and speeches. Then he went on to elaborate on the clip from his lecture that Markle had used in her podcast. He stood by his belief that female antisocial behavior can be difficult to control and has been labeled as hysterical. He said that there was clinical evidence to support his claim that women do, in fact, become difficult to control when they are antisocial, and that kind of behavior often hides under the guise of compassionate care. Peterson seems to feel pretty strongly about this because just at the beginning of the same interview with Morgan, he was asked what he thinks the biggest threat to make is, to which he replied, "Narcissistic compassion." Peterson's comments on sensitive matters didn't end there. He had thoughts on Russian President Vladimir Putin as well. He said that it was a big mistake to assume that Putin is a psychopath because, according to his psychological expertise, there is no evidence to suggest that he is. He had the same response when asked about Donald Trump, asserting that it's very easy to label someone a psychopath and demonize them simply because you don't approve of them and their opinions. He said that it was dangerous to throw around words like that so callously, and here's why. The ability to identify a psychopath falls squarely within Peterson's field of study and knowledge, considering that he is a clinical psychologist. While Peterson didn't didn't offer a clear reason for not applying the psychopath label to Putin, he did mention that the word shouldn't be thrown around so casually. So what we can deduce from that is that he wants people to rely more on the psychological definition of the word, rather than the rhetorical one. This isn't the first time Peterson has talked about Putin and Russia. In an older opinion piece for the Daily Wire, Peterson claimed that he believed that Russia had been pushed to invade Ukraine to prevent the spread of degeneracy of American culture wars, which have now set their target on gender issues. He said that Putin was uniting Russians and justifying the war in Ukraine based on the argument that they need to stop degeneracy fueled by culture wars on gender. Peterson linked these comments back to his deeper thoughts on the matter, even though his opinions haven't been received well at all before. He continued to argue that part of the degeneracy he was referring to does, in fact, stem from America's culture war on gender, which gained worldwide fame when Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was unable to answer "What is a woman?" when asked the question during a confirmation hearing. Peterson firmly believes that in that moment, Russia had all the evidence it needed to believe that the West is irrational and that its ideas need to be stopped from spreading. Peterson has been outspoken about his thoughts on the normalization of transgender pronouns and identities. He said that when Brown Jackson responded with "I'm not a biologist" to the simple question thrown at her, she proved that the US has become degenerate and that all who hold back from calling them on their deranged degeneration become a part of the problem. Like many of Peterson's opinions, these comments didn't go over well with most of the public. They called out the apparent simplification of Russia's invasion of Ukraine in a bloody conflict that has killed tens of thousands in just the past year. These claims came not long after his attack on Ellen Page, one of Hollywood's most famous transgender stars. He accused the actor of converting children by posing for pictures with his abs. Peterson was suspended from Twitter for his tweets, but he stood by his comments, arguing that he would have left Page alone if she hadn't been showing off her new abs in a fashion magazine. In a podcast interview with Kyle Kulinski, when the matter was brought up, Peterson defended his statements and seemed to get visibly frustrated with the podcast host when he attempted to refute the argument. He even yelled at Kulinski, exclaiming that there was nothing correct about what the transgender community was doing. These aren't even a fraction of Peterson's controversial ideas. Here's some more. White privilege doesn't exist. That's one of them. Peterson seems to think that race and ethnicity are postmodernist ideas and that white privilege is simply majority privilege. What does that mean, you ask? Essentially, he says that wherever people happen to be in the majority, the culture is designed to suit the majority. So in a place like America, where white people are in the majority, they are the ones that benefit from the American culture the most. Here's another one. You've probably already guessed that Peterson is very much not a leftist. He often uses William Buckley and Ben Shapiro as examples of conservative thinkers who have clearly definite political boundaries about race and ethnicity. He says that the problem with the left is that they don't know their boundaries, which is why they often cross them. Since he is so disapproving of the left and its ways, it should come as no surprise that Peterson has some pretty anti-gay rhetoric. He cites the fact that children in a family with a father do better than single-parent females. Note, he doesn't use the phrase families with mothers. He has, many times, emphasized his belief in the nuclear family, comprising a father, mother, and child, and that anything that deviates from that basic unit comes with consequences. And then, finally, we have his thoughts on the Me Too movement. He doesn't seem to buy the logic behind women coming forward with their experiences so long after they have actually happened, and neither does he seem to understand the difference between invitation, and sexual harassment. When discussing this topic, Peterson often goes back to his comments on what makes a woman, stating that before, the two genders could be differentiated based on their reproductive systems. But since women have gained control over their reproductive function, they seem to have become a whole new biological entity. Well, that's all we have for you guys today. Do you agree with any of Jordan Peterson's views on these controversial topics, or do you feel like he's gone too far with some of them? Let us know all your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, share, and hit the subscribe button for more content just like this.